Z, Junkie. Podcast today is honesty. Something that I just didn't have for half a century. I just didn't have it. I didn't have the capacity, to be honest. It wasn't until the gift of desperation that was born out of my bottom in which I could finally get honest. Until I hit bottom, until I really experienced my true bottom, I could not get honest in life, period. I came in and out of rooms of the fellowship of one's choosing. Once again, I'm a junkie. I go to one that's suited to that. If you're an overeater, go to one that's suited to that. If you're a gambler, go to one that's suited to that. If you're codependent, go to one that's suited with that. If you're a codependent, go to, go on and on and on. Pick your A, but the fellowship is important because there it is where you'll find a sponsor, somebody to work with to pick up these 12 steps that I'm talking about. However, I've been coming in and out since 1978. And the reason why I couldn't get more than 30 days under my belt is because I couldn't get honest. I never hit my true bottom. I hit bottoms, but obviously they weren't my true bottom. And this addict must hit bottom in order to get honest. That's my experience. So what did it look like? Well, once again, I paid a high price for low living. Okay, I'd come in, get a couple days under my belt, go out, okay, get high, get dope sick, give everything away. Yes, gave it away. Okay, I stopped losing stuff somewhere around the time when I got locked down in '78. Okay, many years ago. Okay, I stopped losing stuff. I just give it away. Okay. Fix physical, fix material, and repeat. Logic doesn't cause us to do what it is that we do as addicts. Whatever your solution may be to survive the onslaught of the addiction, either food, either drugs, alcohol, sex, money, gambling, codependent relationships, whatever your solution may be, logic doesn't cause it. See, the steps, okay, no matter what fellowship you may choose that fits whatever more suited to you, the steps is a spiritual, not religious program. See, the steps are a spiritual, not religious program. Why? No, it doesn't. The steps aren't a logic, not religious program. Spiritual, not religious program. Why? Because what we do has nothing to do with logic. Logic doesn't take us to do what we do, and logic can't help us from what we do. Period. So yes, getting back to the honesty. I had to hit my bottom to truly get honest. When I didn't, I just got high, got dope sick, gave everything away, fixed physical, fixed material to a certain extent, and repeated. That was my insanity. It's important to identify one's insanity. 38 years plus, 40 years plus, okay? Get high, get dope sick. Give everything away, fix physical, fix material, repeat. That was the price I had to pay in operating as an unhealthy 7-year-old. Because when I couldn't get ways and means of getting and doing more, no matter what dance I surrounded around, no matter what cars, homes, bank accounts, professions, degrees, whatever I surrounded around, when it was time for me to get ways and means of getting more, and you didn't insist in that, or stood in the way of that, I would jump up and down like a 7-year-old. That's where getting not honest in my life, okay, has brought me. My true bottom brought honesty. So that's what it looked like when I didn't have honesty. Well, what's it look like now these days when I do have honesty? Well, practicing honesty for years now because of the bottom I hit and that gift of desperation, okay, which was the only way I could get honest. For years now, I was practicing honesty. Well, what does it look like in comparison to what I just explained, not having it? Well, honesty has brought me and my life beyond my wildest dreams, beyond anything I could have imagined. Beyond anything I could have imagined. You know, in the wildest of those dreams, that honesty brought me is the intimacy. Is the intimacy I have with the God of my understanding, and the appropriate intimacies that I have with all relationships in my life. You see, I discover myself through relationships, through the relationship with the God of my understanding, through the relationship with society, through the relationship with service. This is how I discover myself. You know, that honesty where there is no appropriate intimacy that exists with the one who I'm married to and with the God of my understanding. I'm going to stay with the God of my understanding because this is what's going to pertain to the rest. There's no such thing as appropriate intimacy with the God of my understanding. That's honest. That's how our relationship is, honestly. And because there's no appropriate intimacy with the God of my understanding, He allows me to have an appropriate intimacy with the relationships I have in life. Like I mentioned, the relationship I have with the guy checking me out or the person checking me out in Walmart is going to be different than the one I have with my sponsees. The one that I have with my sponsees will be different than the ones I have with my friends. There's going to be appropriate intimacies to all those. And on and on and on and on. The only where appropriate intimacy doesn't exist is with the one I'm married to and the God of my understanding. Because it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper because it was founded on what? Honesty. Okay? This is the crazy thing about these principles. Okay? It's something to get excited about. Okay? Honesty is forever non-changing. These principles are forever non-changing. Okay? The honesty, the acceptance, and the surrender in the first step. Okay? The open-mindedness, the willingness, and the hope in the second. The faith, trust, and commitment in the third. The courage in the fourth. The perseverance in the fifth. The tenacity and tolerance in the sixth. The humility in the seventh. The brotherly love in the eighth. The forgiveness in the ninth. The self-discipline in the 10th, the awareness in the 11th, and the unconditional selfless service and unconditional love in the 12th. These principles that I just mentioned about, and remember, these podcasts and me sharing on these principles will never take the place of formally doing these steps. See, I could hear shares, and I can hear people talk, you know, and I can hear their recovery, but I can't internalize their recovery. However, I can internalize these principles. That's why the fellowship is good. It's good for identification. It's good for motivation. It's good to get going. But I don't care how many people I hear share their recovery. I can't internalize their recovery. That's their recovery. I got to go get my own. And my own is being found by the internalization of those principles. So getting back to the principles, all those principles, not changing, rock solid, etched in stone. What those principles mean here, they mean the same up in the canopy in the Brazilian rainforest. It doesn't matter where you're speaking about them. They remain the same. However, those forever non-changing principles, honestly, flower differently in each one of us. So where there's nothing unique about us, okay, in our using of the drug, the food, the alcohol, the work, the codependent relationship, on and on and on and on and on. Okay, once again, whatever your solution may be. It flowers differently in each one of us. The principles are forever non-changing, but they're forever ever flowering different in each one of us. That's how we find our uniqueness in this life. That's how I found my gifts. So the forever non-changing principles flower differently. So what does that mean? So in honesty, so relationships, okay, when relationships are founded on these forever non-changing principles. Let's just take honesty, because that's what this podcast is about. You see, when the one who I'm married to has the principles of honesty in her and practicing them, and I do have them in me and practicing them, because it's in the behavior. I mean, you could tell me all day what's going on, you know what I'm saying? But all I need to do is look at one's behavior, and I know what's going on. So it's in the behavior. So what happens? So you meet, you get married, okay, and something really beautiful happens, because you see the one you're with flowering in ways you've never seen before. And she sees me flowering in ways she's never seen before. But there's something that's missing in the relationship this time. There's no insecurities. There's no fears. There's no jealousies. And the list could go on and on. That doesn't exist anymore, because the relationship was founded on those forever non-changing principles. So when we start flowering up out of those, okay, there's nothing but support in that. Not the fear, the control, you know what I mean? And everything that goes along with that insanity. And that list can go on forever and ever. So the honesty, okay, in the relationship and the internalization of that principle brings me to places I've never even seen or could never even imagined. You know, honesty also has kept me from moving into things I shouldn't have, to remaining honest. Okay, so what does that look like for me? Well, when I first came into recovery, and I stayed more than a couple days, now I'm counting years instead of days, I had to, start putting some applications out for the first time in my life, because I never punched the clock. I always got involved with projects, this, that, the other thing. I just did things more so a self-employed way. And what it did for me is that I had to remain honest. That's all, in all my affairs. So, I have a few felonies, okay? It just goes along with the active use while being a junkie. Okay, it's just some of the byproducts that go along with that. But what that did for me is that, employees can't help you out. So to God, in my understanding, let me sit in that for a moment, and then started saying, Z, I want you to start getting into your gifts. And I don't want you to do your abilities. So being honest from the get-go saved me from going into places of work or profession, okay, in recovery, that I didn't belong in. So my abilities. He said, listen, I want you to get into your gift and not your abilities. See, my abilities was a broker, developer, owner-operator. I could go back and finish my PsyD degree, Those are all abilities. And once again, my gift. Well, I don't know what my gift is. So I sat in that for a minute. And the God of my understanding revealed to me that my gift was writing. I never wrote before. So it was writing. So I'm getting into the writing. This was years ago. And the writing has brought me to this, and that has brought me to that. And now I'm sitting here. This is my new office. Okay. This is my office. Okay. My rent here a year is $70. This is my new office. This is where I come to add to the gift with the writing and the things that I'm doing. So it all brought me to this point, because I was willing to honestly remain open-minded, okay, to stay in His will. But the biggest thing of all crazy, right? This is going to be crazy, okay? Because everything's a 180 in recovery. This is the biggest thing of all. He came about a couple years ago and said, you know, Z, the abilities that you have, you'll never make ends meet, okay? But stepping into your gift, you'll always make ends meet. What? When you mentioned the writing thing, I was like, well, how am I going to make ends meet? You know, I have to do the work, the abilities, you know, this thing I was caught up. You know, I have to go build or, you know, own or operate or get back to school, finish the side. I have to do these things, else, you know, I'm not going to make ends meet. No. He said, if you do those things, you'll never make ends meet. You'll be always striving to make ends meet. If you do your gift, you'll always make ends meet, because the God of my understanding supplies everything. I turn my will and my life, choice, over to the care of the God of my understanding. Yeah, he cares for me, he protects me, he supplies. He brings my fortune. And what fortune am I talking about? The fortune in the spiritual, in the emotional, and in the physical, and in the mental. The fortune in the spiritual. The fortune in the spiritual. The fortune in the emotional. The emotion in the mental and physical. Great fortune in those things. The monetary stuff would be a byproduct of that. See, the monetarily stuff will never produce that. But that will produce the monetarily stuff. For it is his anyways, is it not? So honesty. And honestly remaining open-minded and willing to stay in the God of my understanding's will by way of choice. I make it my own or not. Because when I don't, by default, I'm doing the will of the addiction, which will take me to jails, institutions, and death until one of them becomes irreversible. So honesty takes me to places I could never imagine. In all my affairs, in every way, shape, and form. Honesty has brought my relationships to places unimaginable. Most profoundly, and especially the relationship I have with myself. For it is, there's no words for it. So I went from paying a high price for low living for a half a century because I couldn't get honest. I thought I had something in that. You know what I mean? My insides never matched my outsides. And I just kept paying a high price for a living. Everything kept disappearing on me. Over and over and over again. So honesty, it's one of the three big spiritual principles that lie within that first step. Honestly getting into acceptance, what I need to get into each and every day, and surrendering that to the God of my understanding keeps me recommitted each day, throughout the day, 1 to infinite times a day to my program, which is the 12 steps. See, there's the honest relationship. Okay, because the addiction is always going to offer up dog crap for the caviar that I'm experiencing in my life these days. Okay, and when the addiction offers up that dog crap to replace the caviar that I'm experiencing these days. The addiction's going to try to have me go for once again because of the familiarity that shooting dope would be a good thing again. Or whatever it is with an overeater would be a good thing again, or whatever it would be with a gambler, a codependent, a sexaholic, an alcoholic, on and on and on. See, the addiction will start bringing up some dog crap and trying me to have to buy into the fact that shooting dope would be a good thing again. See, I need to honestly get with that, though. See, I need to honestly get, because of the familiarity with that, is the only reason why the addiction comes up to me still. Because for 50 years, or how many years one's ever been in that, okay? All right? It's the familiarity of the pain, of the misery, of the self-destruction that's appealing. Yes, we walk through the doors of recovery sick. And we need to pull a 180 from that. The miracle is the perception change. The miracle is the perception change. Therefore, when I do steps, and I work them by reading them, writing them, sharing them, actual application of the principles, making them a lifestyle, I have a perception change. And the miracle has become abundant. The miracle is in a perception change, because that will happen every day throughout each day. But I need to honestly accept the thinking, feeling, and behavior that's surrounding that. Accept it. And surrender it to the God of my understanding, knowing that the addiction is only second in power to the God of my understanding. I need to surrender it to the God of my understanding, completely defeated, praying only for his forgiveness and only for the knowledge of his will and his power to be carried out in me. And never once has the God of my understanding failed to remove it. Never once. That is where honesty has brought me to this day. It still brings me to the freedom of the obsession that's ready to be born up out of the defect of the addiction. By way of choice, I make my own or not. Honesty has brought me a life beyond my wildest dreams. And it's the internal life that I speak about. The substance has now been creating the form. Instead of thinking the car, the home, the bank accounts, all that, the form was somehow going to create the substance. No. Honestly, that will never happen. The substance is what creates the form. Honestly.